At 10:02 a.m., two Ukrainian Flamingo cruise missiles silently lifted off from a concealed launch site in Mykolaiv Oblast, carrying over 2,200 pounds of explosives each. Within 12 minutes, $6 billion of Russian oil vanished in fire, destroyed before Moscow even realized it had been targeted. This was no accident. This was precision warfare at its finest, executed with months of planning, cutting-edge drones, and a calculated exploitation of Russia's own air defenses. At exactly 10:02 a.m. local time on November 2nd, 2025, the Ukrainian strike team had completed the final stages of the missile preparation sequence. Two Flamingo cruise missiles, each armed with a 2,200-pound warhead, were loaded and ready. Equipped with advanced INS guidance and anti-jamming systems, these missiles were not merely weapons. They were instruments of strategic disruption aimed directly at Russia's war-sustaining economy. Their target? The TUAP oil export port, a logistical artery responsible for pumping over $6 billion annually into Moscow's coffers. Destroy it, and you cut the lifeblood fueling both Russia's military campaign and its fragile, sanctions-strained economy. Inside the command center, live feed from a Beaver reconnaissance UAV flickered across the display. The massive pier complex was active at maximum capacity, with distillation towers steaming and manifold pipelines pumping 240,000 barrels of crude oil per day. These pipelines, typically instruments of commerce, were about to become agents of destruction. Ukraine's planners knew exactly how and when to strike to achieve maximum impact, and every second had been accounted for us. The Flamingo missile's flight would take roughly 32 minutes from launch to input, a window long enough for Russian radar operators to detect and intercept them. To mitigate this, Ukraine had orchestrated a diversionary tactic. Earlier that morning, at 12:35 a.m., a squadron of 12 UJ-22 drones quietly departed from a mobile launcher on the Kherson front. Flying in low, dispersed formations beneath 165 feet, the drones hugged the western coastline near the TUAP complex. The UJ-22s had a dual purpose. First, reconnaissance, mapping air defense radar coverage, blind spots, and response timings. Second, a kamikaze role. They were intended to provoke Russian air defenses into revealing their positions and wasting interceptors. By drawing attention away from the northern approach of the Flamingo missiles, the drones would ensure the main strike penetrated the heavily defended terminal unchallenged. At 1:15 a.m., the drones completed their approach arc, now just 23.6 miles from the port. As expected, faint blips appeared across the southwest quadrant of Russian radar displays. 3 blips, then 5, then the full 12, fanned out like a chaotic swarm heading straight for the piers. With a radar cross-section, RCS, of just 0.08 to 0.1 meters, the drones were below the usual alert threshold for cruise missiles. The duty officer hesitated. Weeks of costly misidentifications had made him cautious. Still, he classified the blips as a bird cluster, low priority. This fatal miscalculation would prove catastrophic. As the drones closed within 9.3 miles of manifold pier number 4, the radar system reclassified them correctly as low RCS UAVs. Alarms blared, and Pansier batteries near Pier 165 launched 5 intercept missiles, each worth nearly $1 million. A nearby Book M2 battery fired 3 additional interceptors. 4 drones were down, but their mission was already complete. Every radar signature, every interference pattern, every delay in Russian response had been captured and transmitted in real time to the Ukrainian strike team. The battlefield was now mapped in exacting detail, and the launch order for the Flamingo missiles was issued. Moments later, the hydraulic launcher raised the first 17-foot missile and slid it along a 28-degree launch angle. Within seconds, Flamingo 1 left its rail silently, followed by Flamingo 2. Both descended to 85 feet, cruising at 550 miles per hour along a terrain-hugging path that avoided detection, heading straight for Pier 167, the primary crude oil loading area. At the pier, the MT Chai and Coastbuster Liberia tankers waited to receive their cargo. A third vessel, the Pollock under the Panama flag, remained idle nearby. Together, the ships formed a high-value target cluster, the perfect focus for Ukraine's calculated assault. Meanwhile, the remaining 8 UJ-22 drones closed in on the southern piers. Each carried a 7-pound high-explosive incendiary payload, capable of piercing 0.4 to 0.6 inches of steel. At 1:23 a.m., the drones descended to just 20 to 26 feet above the water. scanning for thermal signatures with onboard infrared cameras. FLIR systems automatically validated targets with 98% confidence. Once a target was confirmed, the drones entered kamikaze mode, striking their assigned objectives. UJ-22 No. 1 detonated against the high-pressure manifold feeding Pier 167. The 0.55-inch steel shell failed instantly, rupturing the valve and spraying crude oil beneath MT Chai's hull. The mixture ignited immediately, creating a 100-foot wall of flame along the deck. Simultaneously, drones 2 and 3 destroyed the foam system control shed and the electrical dispatch cabin, respectively, taking down firefighting systems and SCADA controls. Drones 4 and 5 severed transfer hoses and triggered vapor detonations beneath Pier 167, while Drone 6 ignited auxiliary chemical tanks. Drones 7 and 8 were intercepted, but by then, the chaos had reached a critical threshold. Now the Flamingo missiles were entering the final phase. Russian Air Defense Command finally detected something amiss, but the Pantsir and Buk M2 batteries had exhausted or failed to pivot. The Tor M2 battery could not acquire the low-angle targets in time. With no effective counter remaining, Flamingo 1 and 2 dove at over 528 miles per hour toward their targets. Flamingo 1 impacted the connector hub to Tank 2 on MT Chai. The internal pressure generated a BLEVE, boiling liquid expanding vapor explosion, that tore the tanker apart, launching a 590-foot fireball into the night sky. Flamingo 2 penetrated the engine and fuel systems of Coast Buster, igniting a chain reaction across auxiliary chemical storage. Flames consumed both vessels within 25 seconds. The resulting fire spread across the oil slick in the southern basin, engulfing Piers 166 to 167. Hard containment booms were obliterated. Satellite imagery from Planet Labs later confirmed the devastation. A massive waterborne fire, black smoke columns exceeding 985 feet, and 2 tankers completely destroyed. Structural damage to manifolds, pipelines, and pump stations was catastrophic. Even the Pollux suffered significant damage. TUAP was Russia's strategic energy spearhead on the Black Sea, exporting over 240,000 barrels per day, approximately 8.5% of Europe-bound crude. The terminal generated hundreds of millions in monthly revenue, funding troops and propping up a war-strained economy under sanctions. By striking it at its source, Ukraine inflicted damage beyond material loss. It hit Moscow's ability to sustain operations. This precision strike required minimal expenditure, less than $1 million for the drones and missile fuel, yet inflicted over $200 million in material losses. TUAP's crude export capacity was projected to be offline for 10 to 14 days, creating immediate disruption in Russian maritime logistics. Shadow Fleet tankers intended to circumvent sanctions were eliminated in broad daylight, leaving an unmistakable trail visible to commercial satellites. Emergency response assets from Novorossiysk and Sochi were dispatched, but fire control tugs and heavy containment booms arrived too late. The maritime logistics chain across the Black Sea remained paralyzed for hours. Independent OSINT verification, including satellite imagery, AIS logs, fire detection, and radar data, confirmed the scale of destruction. Moscow stayed silent for 36 hours. No official statement, no damage control, only attempts to conceal the operational failure. The strike symbolized a new type of warfare: precision, deception, and intelligence leveraged to allow a smaller, technologically agile force to outmaneuver a larger conventional defense. TUAP was no longer untouchable. From this night onward, no Russian port could consider itself safe. UAVs and cruise missiles could come from any direction, at any moment, and Moscow's maritime energy network was vulnerable to precise surgical strikes capable of crippling operations in minutes. Ukraine had rewritten the rules of engagement over the Black Sea. With a calculated blend of drones, deception, and missile technology, the strike demonstrated that in modern warfare, intelligence, timing, and precision often outweigh raw firepower. Within minutes, a $6 billion hub of Russian oil exports became a blazing inferno, proof that even the most fortified and strategically critical infrastructure can be rendered impotent by careful planning and innovative application of technology. By the time the smoke cleared, the strategic message was clear. Ukraine had shown it could strike at the heart of Russia's energy network, neutralizing critical assets with precision and minimal exposure. The consequences of TUAP's destruction would ripple across the Black Sea, through Russia's logistics and revenue networks, and into Moscow's war planning calculus. And this was not just a strike, it was a tactical statement, a display of operational mastery, and a warning. Any point of vulnerability, no matter how secure it appears, can and will be exploited.